This is Warhawk Beyond 2040, bringing to you another edition of the Wrestling Discussion Series. And February 24th, 2014 marks 12 years ago that history was made on Raw when The Undertaker made his shocking return to confront Brock Lesnar and delivered a chokeslam to the Beast through a table and accepted his challenge for a match at WrestleMania, thus kicking off the renewal of one of the greatest, most violent, and important feuds in wrestling history. And this is part two of a three-part special where I am going to be discussing the entire Undertaker versus Brock Lesnar feud. And for today's special edition, I am going to be discussing the success and failures of The Undertaker versus Brock Lesnar's second feud from February 2014 to April 2014. So during Brock Lesnar's first run in WWE, Brock Lesnar and The Undertaker had one of the most violent and personal feuds during the Ruthless Aggression era on SmackDown. And this feud kicked off back in July 2002 when Brock Lesnar brutally attacked The Undertaker and delivered an F5 to The Undertaker. And this would lead to a feud between two of WWE's toughest guys, culminating in two matches, one at Unforgiven 2002 and a Hell in a Cell match at No Mercy 2002. And on both occasions, Brock Lesnar came out on top, scoring not one but two victories over The Undertaker. And they would face each other one more time the following year at No Mercy 2003 in a biker chain match where Brock Lesnar picked up another victory over The Undertaker. And fast forward to 2004, The Undertaker made his return at WrestleMania 20 as the Dead Man, but on the same night, Brock Lesnar left WWE, resulting in The Undertaker and Brock Lesnar missing each other and not facing each other one more time. After Brock Lesnar left WWE, Undertaker became the man on SmackDown. He would win multiple world titles. He would have epic feud after epic feud. He would have the best match of the show every year at WrestleMania, while also putting together perhaps the biggest and most impressive winning streak at WrestleMania, picking up victory after victory after victory. And The Undertaker had perhaps the greatest run of his entire career, and thus cementing himself as an even bigger legend than he was already, and also achieved godlike status in WWE. Brock Lesnar, on the other hand, after leaving WWE, he would try out for the NFL and he would eventually jump into the world of UFC, where he would become one of the biggest box office attractions of all time and cementing himself as a household name in his own right. And it looked like, for all intents and purposes, Brock Lesnar was done with WWE, and in turn, it looked like WWE were done with Brock Lesnar. So the seeds were planted for this latest installment of The Undertaker versus Brock Lesnar feud, but it wasn't actually in WWE. It was actually outside of WWE. So in 2010, Undertaker was spotted at a UFC event out of character with his wife, Michelle McCool, where they sat in the front row and watched Brock Lesnar's fight. Brock Lesnar would lose his fight and he would be led to the backstage area, and Undertaker was being interviewed, and he would look at Brock Lesnar and ask him, "Do you want to do it?" And Undertaker and Brock Lesnar stared each other down, didn't say a word, and Brock Lesnar carried on walking. And the interviewer asked Undertaker, "What was that all about?" And Undertaker said, "It's kind of a little thing between me and Brock Lesnar. It's personal." And the interviewer pressed even more and asked, "Was there a little beef between you and Brock, perhaps?" And Undertaker smirked, kept his mouth shut, and just very quietly said, "It's personal." We would learn many years later on the Broken Skull sessions when Stone Cold asked Undertaker, "What were you doing at the UFC event? Why did you stare down Brock like that? What was that all about?" And Undertaker finally addressed what we had been dying to know for years. Undertaker said, "I went there for one reason, to pick a fight, to create a buzz." And it definitely did get the world buzzing because as soon as that incident happened, everybody asked questions. Is there beef between The Undertaker and Brock Lesnar? Could Brock Lesnar be coming back? And Undertaker said there could be a possibility that Brock might come back to WWE. So I was merely stirring the pot. I was trying to get some buzz, some attention. You know, I wanted to pick a fight. So fast forward to 2012, the night after WrestleMania 28, Brock Lesnar made his shocking return on Raw and delivered an F5 to John Cena. And this would lead to Brock Lesnar facing John Cena in his first match in WWE at Extreme Rules, where Brock Lesnar would lose his first match to John Cena. Now, by this point, when Brock Lesnar came back to WWE, Undertaker had pretty much ceased being a full time wrestler. He was no longer competing on the show every week. He was now in semi retirement and was only wrestling once a year, exclusively at WrestleMania. Now, the chances of an Undertaker versus Brock Lesnar feud, in my mind, seemed very slim because number one, Undertaker was no longer on the show every single week. He was only appearing once a year for one match, and he was pretty much a special attraction, so there was no need for him to be on the show every week. Brock Lesnar, on the other hand, was a part time guy where he would only come out for a big match and if there was loads of money involved. So the chances of an Undertaker versus Brock Lesnar match, in my mind, seemed damn near impossible. But I always knew deep down that we would get some form of confrontation. I thought, okay, we might not get a match, but we'll probably get a segment or a promo. Maybe The Undertaker could make an appearance on Raw. Brock Lesnar could interrupt him. The two of them could stare each other down, have a little brawl, and that would be it. That's what I thought. Now, Brock Lesnar losing his first match to John Cena at Extreme Rules 2012 really bothered me a lot because, first of all, you have Brock Lesnar, this unbeatable monster coming straight into WWE from UFC. I did not like the decision at all. I was not a fan. I would have had Brock Lesnar win his first match, and I would have had him remain undefeated throughout his run all the way up to his match against The Undertaker. Because during this time, he faced John Cena, he faced Triple H on three different occasions, and he had a match against The Big Show. Now, a couple of those matches, Brock Lesnar lost. As I said, I would have kept Brock Lesnar completely undefeated, no losses whatsoever. So when it came time to face The Undertaker, at WrestleMania 30, it would have made the match feel like an even more bigger deal. Because think about it, you've got on one side Brock Lesnar, who's just come back. He hasn't suffered a single pinfall or submission loss. And then on the other side, you've got The Undertaker, who is undefeated at WrestleMania. And then you could also add into the fact that Undertaker has never beaten Brock Lesnar one on one. That would have made everybody nervous as hell. Two streaks going at it. Something had to give, but it is what it is. The booking decisions involving Brock Lesnar were a bit questionable. As I said, I personally would have kept Brock Lesnar undefeated throughout because when he did what he did at WrestleMania 30, it just would have made it even more gigantic, in my opinion. So at the Royal Rumble 2014, Batista won the Royal Rumble match, and it looked like he was going to face Randy Orton for the world title. The fans boycotted it. They wanted Daniel Bryan in that match, and Daniel Bryan was doing everything he could to try and get himself into that title match. So Brock Lesnar, very surprisingly, had no opponents. He had nothing going on for WrestleMania. So Triple H and Stephanie McMahon offered Brock Lesnar an open contract to face an opponent of his choosing at WrestleMania. Paul Heyman got on the mic and said, "Thanks, but no thanks. My client, Brock Lesnar, isn't interested in your consolation prize. My client, Brock Lesnar, wants to make history. Brock Lesnar isn't here to make people smile and make people happy. Brock Lesnar is here to conquer and he is here to make history. So, if you will not give my client Brock Lesnar history to make, then me and Brock Lesnar will skip WrestleMania altogether. Not interested. I've said it once and I'll say it again. Brock Lesnar wants to make history. So Paul Heyman dropped the mic. Him and Brock looked at each other and both went, let's go. And then the gong went and the lights went out. And this was the moment I had been waiting for a very long time since Brock Lesnar walked back into WWE. Undertaker's music hit and he came out to a massive pop. And The Undertaker came out in a modified version of his ministry look. So we got the full long hooded robe, devilish long goatee. This was something I had been dreaming about in my head for years. I had always wanted to see Ministry Undertaker battle Brock Lesnar. Now, this wasn't the classic Ministry look that we all remember from the Attitude Era. There was a little bit of a difference. Undertaker obviously was a lot older and he had completely shaved his head and had this mohawk and he had the long devilish goatee. So it was the closest thing to the ministry look that we'll probably ever get to see. As The Undertaker slowly made his way to the ring, Brock Lesnar stood there in complete disbelief, and Paul Heyman looked like he just crapped himself. And The Undertaker brought the lights back up, got straight into Brock Lesnar's face. The fans were chanting Undertaker's name. Undertaker slowly looked up at the WrestleMania sign. He was here for one reason and one reason only, to confront Brock Lesnar. Brock Lesnar wanted to make history, or history was standing in front of him in the form of The Undertaker. So Brock Lesnar signed the contract. He grabbed the pen and very disrespectfully pressed it against Undertaker's chest while Paul Heyman looked on, smirking away. Paul Heyman grabbed the mic and said to The Undertaker, "The contract has been signed, and if you'd like to sign it, Mr. Undertaker, you may have your match against Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania 30. Undertaker stabbed Brock Lesnar's hand with the pen, removed his hood, and delivered a chokeslam to Brock Lesnar through the table and accepted Brock Lesnar's challenge for a match at WrestleMania 30. You could not ask for a much better start for this build up, but here's where the failures are about to come in. As soon as this match was made official, as soon as Undertaker chokeslammed Brock Lesnar through the table after stabbing his hand with a pen, I thought to myself, okay, this is going to be an amazing ride because I know the history between The Undertaker and Brock Lesnar. They had a classic feud back in 2002 to 2003, one of the best feuds on SmackDown during the Ruthless Aggression era. So I was expecting big things. And this was the first time in many years that we were going to get an Undertaker versus Brock Lesnar match. So this was a huge deal for me. And this wasn't the same Undertaker and Brock Lesnar we got years earlier. Undertaker now was an even more bigger legend than he was before, and as I said earlier, he had achieved godlike status in the company. Brock Lesnar was no longer the inexperienced rookie, he was now a household name from the world of UFC, and of course, the differences was Undertaker was a lot older with bucket loads of experience, and Brock Lesnar, still a young man in his prime, just a little bit older, but still much younger than Undertaker and more dangerous than ever. Boy, oh boy, this was big. Very, very big. Now, the build up for this match, in all honesty, it was okay, but it just wasn't that great. It lacked the drama, it lacked that emotion, it lacked the intensity of their previous feud. It just seemed like business as usual. It just seemed like everybody was phoning it in, going through the motions. Nobody was really putting their heart and soul into it. And Brock Lesnar was hardly on TV, which hurts it even more. Undertaker and Paul Heyman had a couple of good promos together. They did most of the legwork. They really carried this build up because one thing I've always liked about Taker is even though he was a part time guy, when he was involved in a build up for a big match, he was there every single week. He was all in. Brock Lesnar, on the other hand, he was hardly on TV. I think altogether for this build up, I think Brock Lesnar only made 3 appearances on TV. Absolutely disgraceful, in my opinion. I love Brock Lesnar, but I think he should have been on TV a little bit more. If we had brought his appearances up to maybe 5, that would have been okay, but only 3 appearances. Absolutely terrible. Now, they try to treat this match as if we've never seen Undertaker and Brock Lesnar face each other before. And I hate it when WWE do stupid things like that. They always try to insult the fans' intelligence by saying, oh, we've never ever seen these two face each other before. This is completely new. And yet, we as long-time fans know that these two have the history. We know that they faced each other before. Just silly stuff, in my opinion. And the build up itself, I would have loved them to touch upon the past a lot more, address the fact that Undertaker has never beaten Brock Lesnar, and I would have had Undertaker's age play a big part in the build up. Paul Heyman could have said something on the lines of, Undertaker, may I remind you that the last time you faced Brock Lesnar. He left you in a bloody, broken heap and almost put you into retirement. You're not the same person you were when Brock Lesnar last faced you. Yes, you may have escaped with your health and you did become an even bigger legend than you are right now. But would you have become the man that you are now if Brock Lesnar was still around? You and I both know that would never have happened. So I would have done something like that. I would have really put so much emphasis on the fact that Undertaker has never beaten Brock Lesnar. He's a lot older now. Can he still go? Can he deliver one more epic performance at WrestleMania? Can he finally get the victory that's eluded him throughout his entire career? I would have built it up more. But the promo work that Paul Heyman put into showing great respect to The Undertaker's streak and his accomplishments, that was good stuff. But also Paul Heyman reminding Undertaker that I advise you not to face Brock Lesnar because if you do, Brock Lesnar will beat you. That's not a prediction, that's a spoiler. So, got a little something like that. I suppose that was okay, but yeah, they should have really pushed the story more about not beating Brock and Taker's age. I think that would have made the match even more interesting. So Undertaker confronted Paul Heyman on Saturday night's main event and told Paul Heyman that he was going to destroy Brock Lesnar and send him to the depths of hell. Good stuff, but again, not really feeling that intensity of their first feud they had together. So Undertaker brought out a casket to try and play mind games with Brock Lesnar. They had a little brawl, but again, okay stuff, but pretty standard WWE stuff. Nothing special here. And I never really got the impression that Undertaker and the streak was in danger because we were never led to believe otherwise. I very casually treated it as, oh, it's okay. Undertaker's got this in the bag. He's going over. It won't be easy, but he'll beat Brock Lesnar. He has to, because we were not led to believe otherwise. So, on the go home show before WrestleMania 30, after weeks of not getting the advantage, Brock Lesnar finally got the last word and delivered a violent F5 to The Undertaker. And everyone looked up and said, oh, maybe Brock may have a chance. If he hits that F5, it's all over. But at the same time, I looked at it like, well, usually when someone gets the last word before the big match, that other person is going over. That's how I felt about this match. So as we get to WrestleMania 30, you kind of know where this is all going already. And as a fan of both The Undertaker and Brock Lesnar, this match was not their best. It was absolutely terrible. It was very slow, very boring. And Undertaker, as soon as the hat and coat came off, he didn't look like the Undertaker we know. I appreciate the fact that he's a lot older. He's not going to look the same as he did years earlier. I get that, but he just looked really old, gaunt, out of shape. He had a little bit of a gut as well, and he obviously sustained a horrible concussion during the match, and it just hurt his performance overall. But mega props to Brock Lesnar for carrying The Undertaker and keeping him safe. Much love to him for doing that. But like I said, as someone who knows that Undertaker and Brock Lesnar have had classic matches in the past, this was not their best. And that's coming from a guy who's a fan of both of them. So after three F5s, Brock Lesnar pinned The Undertaker 1, 2, 3 and ended the streak to the shock of everyone and handed Undertaker his first ever loss. bringing his record to 21 and 1. Now, I did a separate video about the success and failures of Brock Lesnar ending the streak, and you know, I'm not going to go into it too much, but it'll be impossible not to say anything about this, but I'm going to anyway. I personally think Brock Lesnar didn't need the rub because he was already a made man, he was already a monster. I don't think a loss would have hurt him at all. I think Undertaker should have gone over because he had never beaten Brock Lesnar. You know, Brock Lesnar already beat The Undertaker like 2 or 3 times prior. So I think he should have returned the favour, for everything Undertaker did for him during his first run. You know, just disappointing stuff, really. And what makes it even worse is after the streak was broken, Undertaker still wrestled for a few more years. So what was the point in ending the streak? It just made no sense to me whatsoever. And Undertaker was gone after the loss. Obviously we know that he sustained a terrible concussion and he was off TV for well over a year. And I'm not going to lie, when Brock Lesnar came out of WrestleMania 30, he came out with a ton of nuclear heat to the point of radioactive level. It made him an even more bigger monster. He went on an absolute tear and he destroyed John Cena and became the Universal Champion. It just made him an even more bigger monster. But I still believe he would have had that anyway, even if he lost to The Undertaker. And Paul Heyman was rubbing it in everyone's faces every chance he got. My client is the one in 21 and 1. But yeah, the match itself, as I said, wasn't that good. The build up was poor as well. I've always been under the belief that the streak should have been saved for someone on the rise, someone like Bray Wyatt or Roman Reigns, somebody who is in their prime or a young guy who could have benefited from beating a true legend like The Undertaker and ending the streak. But that never happened. As I said, I don't think Brock Lesnar needed it, and I think everyone would agree with me on that. And like I said, knowing the good work that Undertaker and Brock Lesnar had done together the first time round, this was a huge letdown, in my opinion. And when Undertaker came back in 2015, little did we know that Brock Lesnar ending the streak would escalate into a massive war between The Undertaker and Brock Lesnar, which will be discussed for part 3. But yeah, as a fan, yeah, I was quite disappointed. So, in terms of the success and failures of The Undertaker versus Brock Lesnar second feud from February 2014 to April 2014, as a big fan of both of The Undertaker and Brock Lesnar, this was a complete failure. I'm sorry. The build up was poor, no intensity, no drama, not much of a story. The match itself was a disappointment. Ending the streak was poor as well. Very bad decision. The only good things about the whole build up was Undertaker chokeslamming Brock Lesnar through a table, Brock Lesnar giving Undertaker an F5 before the go home show. The promo work between Undertaker and Paul Heyman was tremendous. But other than that, it wasn't really much of a build up. And plus, it was quite short as well. I'm not expecting like 6 month build up because that's impossible. But I just would have liked maybe a little bit more time. Maybe they could have built this up earlier, given it 2 months. Could have worked out better. And of course, the fact that Brock Lesnar was hardly on TV, he was made, what, 3 appearances Not good. Should have been part of it more, in my opinion. He should have been all in. Taker was. Why couldn't Brock? But it is what it is. But yeah, a complete failure as far as I'm concerned. I don't really like saying the word failure in the same sentence with guys like Undertaker and Brock Lesnar, but it is what it is. It's the truth. It's how I felt at the time. I still feel that way now, but what can I say, really? So, anyway, that's going to be it from me. I'm going to wrap this up now. What was your thoughts on The Undertaker versus Brock Lesnar second feud from February 2014 to April 2014? Did you enjoy it? What was your favourite moment from this feud? Did you like it when Undertaker returned and delivered a chokeslam to Brock Lesnar through the table? Did you like it when Brock Lesnar delivered an F5 to The Undertaker on the Go Home show before WrestleMania 30? Did you like the promo work between Paul Heyman and Undertaker? And what did you think of the match itself? Did you think it was good? Do you think it was bad? Do you think the decision to end the streak was the right call? Or do you think it was a bad decision? You know what to do, guys. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, leave your thoughts and comments down below, and I will see all of you next time for another edition of the Wrestling Discussion Series, where I will be back with the third and final part of The Undertaker versus Brock Lesnar feud, where I'm going to be discussing their third feud from 2015, which was, in my opinion, 10 times better than the one we got in 2014. So make sure you don't miss that. So until next time, take care, everybody, and stay safe. And once again, as always, much appreciated. Thanks for listening.